2 months into the school year, I always rip them down and I'm like, I hate primary colors everywhere. So in today's video, we're going to laugh a little, we're gonna cringe a little, we're gonna reflect a little, and we're gonna talk about homeschool fails. I'm super excited because today's video is a collaboration with a bunch of mamas, and I'm excited to pop through their videos throughout the weekend and see what they would consider to be their homeschool fails. So I'm gonna put a slide up here so you can see everybody who's involved in this. I'm also going to link everybody's channel down below. I hope you guys take some time to pop through those and have a little laugh, hear a little encouragement, know you're not alone if you relate to some of these stories. And if you're new to my channel and you have found my channel through one of these other moms, welcome to my channel. My name is Abby. I am a homeschooling mom of 4. They are 3 through 11, and we have been homeschooling for about 7 years. And every time I get a message from somebody who says that they've been homeschooling for X amount of years, if you don't count preschool, I always say, no. Always count preschool, because 1, it's a huge learning curve and a lot of my fails have to do with preschool. And 2, those are some really tough years to work out some kinks. So I have been homeschooling for 7 years if you include preschool. So I thought that I would go through some of these fails. I have some more serious, like real fails, lessons learned, and then I have some funny ones that I think a lot of you guys are going to relate to. I also have 2 other videos kind of similar to this that I didn't want to say the same thing, so I'm just going to direct you to those videos. One of them is my homeschooling is not video, and that one is really serious. Those are 7 hard lessons that I've learned in the last few years of homeschooling, things that I just had to learn the hard way. So I will link that up there. And the second thing is my biggest regret with homeschooling, and that one was just kind of focused on protecting myself from others' opinions, and I'm not gonna go into that in this video, so I'm gonna also put a link up there for that if you are interested in that. So I'm gonna start with the more serious things that I would call a fail. Of course, we all know that homeschooling is just a learning curve, so I don't really think there's a lot of failure in these things, but these are things that I definitely had to work out over time. The first thing was not recognizing lesson fatigue, and that was just me not knowing what signs to look for with my kids, especially when they're younger, when they start to goof off or stare off into space or just have that little burnout. And over time, we've become very much more aligned with the Charlotte Mason method, and we do much shorter lessons. But in those beginning days, I really just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And one of the things that I want to say about that, especially if you're new to homeschooling, is that your kids, if they were in school, if they went to a traditional school and they were in school 7 or 8 hours a day, they would not be getting one-on-one instruction all day long. And the one-on-one instruction, 1, requires much less time, because once they master it, you can move on. But 2, it's a lot more intense for kids because it is just that one-on-one all day long. So you don't have to go and exhaust yourself in these long lessons. For example, if I'm remembering correctly, I believe we spent in elementary school half an hour to an hour on every subject as a child. When I'm doing lessons with my kids, those same lessons, the same day's worth of lessons, could really be condensed down to 15 or 20 minutes per subject when you're one-on-one. So I just didn't know what to look for in my kids, and it's very individual for each child as well. So it just has taken me time, but definitely going back to those early days, I pushed beyond those limits and I didn't really know what I was looking for, and they weren't able to communicate because they were little. The second one, kind of similar, is just moving too fast and kind of feeling the pressure of a school year, because we're not held to a typical school year schedule. So I would try to blow through curriculum way too fast, where now I know that as a family, for example, for science, I don't have to finish the whole textbook in 1 year. I don't have to rush my kids. If they want to sit on one subject for a while, that's amazing, we can do so. Or if they want to spread it out over a couple of years, we can do that as well. If they are uninterested in something, we can just go through the basics and move on, but there's no time constraint. So I just very often in those early days moved way too fast. Another thing I would consider to be a fail, and all of this really does go back to those early elementary school days when I was learning and right alongside my kids. I call it the house on fire priorities, because I will text John sometimes as well, and I'll just say, like, and we text this now, this is a phrase we use often. I'll say, what's on fire when I wake up in the morning, because that's gonna be what I feel like I need to put out first before we can do school. So it's hard to balance homemaking and homeschooling. And so as my kids were younger and we were just starting homeschool, I just couldn't function if the house was a mess. So I would wake up and I'd put out all the fires. I'd do the dishes. Ooh, there's a gnat. I would do all the dishes. I would make sure that everything was picked up. I would sweep, because I can't stand the feeling of sand. We live in Florida, sand on the floor. I would make sure, everybody was, well, I mean, it's generally good to make sure everybody's dressed and ready to go, but there were so many steps I would take before we would start school. And then by the time we would start school, I was either exhausted, I had no patience, or very often I would say, oh my gosh, like now it's already 11, so let's just forget it. And that's not a good habit to be in. So now I try to put out those fires the night before, and I wish I could say that I just kind of blaze through them and do school and then get to them later. But I know myself well enough to say that if I see a messy kitchen or if there's just mess throughout the house, it's really gonna throw me. So if at all possible, I put out those fires the night before so that I don't have to deal with them in the morning. But definitely in those early days, my mistake was staying up way too late planning stuff for school, waking up and having other priorities and just kind of getting off balance and then never actually putting those plans in action. Another one that I'm sure you guys can really relate to is switching curriculum. When we started homeschooling a while back, we found a lot of things that we really loved, but then other curriculum companies have popped up, specifically in the last few years, that just looked so exciting. And I ditched what worked for us and wanted to try something new. To that I say, there's always going to be something shinier and new and exciting. But if you have found what works and what works for your family, it's not always worth it to ditch that. So whatever the trending topic is, whatever is exciting, if it can be worked in and it can be seamless and it adds beauty to your homeschool, of course it's worth it. If you're just feeling like you're missing out on something good, but what you already have is working for you, it's not always worth it. And that's a lesson I had to learn the hard way. And then scheduling wise, I oftentimes in those earlier days would either overschedule us and I'd write 15 minutes for this, 15 minutes for that, and then I'd like want to follow a schedule, or I would serve the schedule instead of having a rhythm or a routine that served us. And I'll link another video up here. I feel like I'm being super self-promoting and I feel bad about that, but I'll link another video up here if you want to know more about generally how I create a rhythm in our home, in our homeschool versus a schedule. In our area, I know this isn't the same in every area, but in our area, there are so many exciting opportunities for homeschoolers. We have a for being a pretty small town, we have a huge homeschooling community. And there's literally something we could do every single day. All the dance studios, gymnastics studios, music studios, everybody has a homeschooling opportunity during the day because our homeschooling community is large and a lot of people have found opportunity to make more income instead of just waiting until school hours are finished. There's tons of co-ops, there's tons of nature classes, science classes, Bible classes, so much going on. And one of the biggest mistakes I made in our early days was saying yes to everything because it looked good. And it all does, it all looks really good, but nothing is good when there's too much happening for your own family's pace. And I totally threw us into way too much in those early days, but it's really hard to sort through what's beneficial and what just looks really good but isn't gonna work out for your family. That's another thing you kind of have to learn the hard way. So that was one of my mistakes that I made early on as well. And then this one's kind of funny, not so serious, but overcomplicating food is one that I still struggle with. It's okay to have cereal sometimes, but sometimes I feel like, well, we're not in a rush. I'm not a working mom. My kids aren't going to school. We have more than 5 minutes for breakfast, so I need to like make this whole thing. It's okay to have cereal for lunch. It's okay, or for breakfast. It's okay to have cheese and crackers for lunch. You don't have to cook 3 full meals a day just because you have the time to. Now I happen to like to cook, so I have to find a balance there as well. But overcomplicating food is definitely a hard one because you're in charge of 3 meals a day for 18 years minimum. It's like no end in sight. Snacks, all of it, that's you. You're the lunch lady, you're the teacher, you're the janitor, you're everything. So wherever you can make healthy choices but cut corners, let yourselves off the hook. That was one of my, and still is one of my fails. But I wanna move on to talking about some of the fun things. It's kind of some of like the, you might be a homeschooler if things. In our first few years of homeschool, I bought a backpack and a lunchbox every year in our back to school haul, and I always thought it was worth it, and I justify, well, they do go to co-op on this day, or they go to sleepovers, they can bring the backpack. They didn't need a shiny new backpack and a lunchbox every single year. Now for the last 4 or 5 years, we've had the same lunch boxes because we only use them 1 day a week, but that was hard. That was a hard one for me to let go of. So that was like one of my first little homeschool fails, like one of those things that I kind of held on to and didn't need, I just struggled to let go of with the concept of homeschooling. Like they don't need new pencil cases, they don't need new lunch boxes, but I just, you know, that back to school spirit kind of gets you, and then you find yourself in the lunchbox aisle as a homeschooler. Another thing was, well, I don't know. You guys might laugh at this or not. Initially, we always said the pledge when we started school. And I had considered that a fail for a long, long time because it's just kind of funny. The whole fail in that is creating like a classroom at home when you kind of learn in the end that it's not, that's not what's gonna work. But now we actually do say the pledge every day. The kids and I have studied the American Revolution very heavily over the last couple of years, and patriotism and things like that. And so it's not every day, but we do often say the pledge. Kind of a fail in that as well is because when we stopped doing that after preschool 7 years ago, we would find ourselves at baseball or basketball or the rodeo or whatever sporting event we were at, and they would say the pledge and they would sing the national anthem, and my kids were always like, watermelon, watermelon. They had no idea what it was. And so we did bring that back, but not every day. I don't make them like formally go through it every single day, but it is you know, we love America. We have, oh yes, one of the mistakes I commonly make and finally have stopped doing it, and John is very happy camper that I've stopped doing this, is just like putting up primary colored posters all over the place. And every year when I'm going through the Target dollar spot, and every year when I'm doing back to school shopping, I just can't look because it's still like, oh, wouldn't that look so beautiful in our, or wouldn't that be so great in our little preschool corner? But 2 months into the school year, I always rip them down and I'm like, I hate primary colors everywhere. So fail. Library fees, fail. Need I say more? There's a reason I became an Usborne consultant, and it is because I'd rather make money on books than lose money on books I don't even get to keep. So library fees. Forgotten shoes. Oh my gosh, my kids are not in the habit of putting shoes on every day. Half because we live in Florida, half because they're not required to anywhere we go. So yes, there have been so many times where we have showed up to our Bible study specifically, and their teachers are always kind and gracious with me. Like they give me that they're all elderly, so they give me that like knowing look, like I know, I got you. But yes, forgotten shoes. On the same page is until I caught it with Eli when he was in kindergarten, I did not teach my older kids how to tie their shoes until it was like a shameful, embarrassing moment, like middle of the basketball court when they're like 8 or 10, their shoes are untied and they're like looking at me to come tie their shoes, which is so embarrassing and I feel so bad about it. But something like that happened to both of them. My daughter in dance class tying her tap shoes, my son on the basketball court. Again, Florida, homeschool, they're not required to wear closed-toed shoes, nor do many of us even own closed-toed shoes that tie unless we're in sports. So we did not tie our shoes at an appropriate age. And the last one I'm gonna leave you with is Have you ever seen a homeschool kid try to use a water fountain for the first time? Fail. So funny. They're just like, wow, that's amazing. So those are my personal homeschool fails. Some lessons I've learned the hard way, some just silly little things that homeschoolers will understand. I'm really excited to hear what everybody else considers to be their homeschool fails, so make sure you pop through the list of videos down below and check out everybody's videos. Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you would consider to be your homeschool fails, serious or funny. And just remember, it's the end of the homeschool year. Let yourself off the hook. None of these fails are going to matter years from now. So just be kind to yourself, enjoy the process, and laugh at yourself when you need to. So I will see you guys later. Bye.